Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe and hit the bell icon for new updates. Stan Laurel was a man whose gift for laughter touched millions across the globe. Yet behind the iconic slapstick humor he shared with Oliver Hardy, there was a life shadowed by sorrow, loss, and hardship. The joy he gave to audiences masked the heartbreaking challenges he faced in his personal and professional world. His triumphs on screen stand in stark contrast to the pain he endured off-screen, from devastating personal tragedies to the struggles of a career that often felt like a fight for recognition. The most harrowing of these battles came when Stan lost his son, a tragedy that would forever alter his world. But before we delve into the heartbreak of this profound loss, let's pause to reflect on the moments that made Stan Laurel a household name, the laughter he sparked, and the resilience that defined him. Born on June 16, 1890, in the quaint town of Ulverston, Lancaster, Arthur Stanley Jefferson would grow to be known by the world as Stan Laurel. Raised in a world of theater, his parents, Arthur J. Jefferson, an actor and theater manager, and Margaret, an actress, were too consumed by their craft to raise him full-time. As a result, Stan was largely raised by his grandparents, George and Sarah Metcalf, in the close-knit town of Ulverston. His early life wasn't spent in carefree play. Instead, it was shaped by the rhythms of church bells and the lure of the stage, especially at the nearby Hippodrome Theater, where his father's plays were brought to life. This was the world Stan knew, a world of artistry, drama, and performance. As a boy, Stan wasn't just absorbing the beauty of the stage. He was learning, adapting, and forging an early connection to the theater that would shape his entire career. At the age of 20, after the Hippodrome Theater had burned down in 1910, he left for America, chasing his own dreams of stardom. Before that journey, though, Stan's life had already led him to several pivotal moments. He had spent time with his grandmother in North Shields before attending various schools, including King James I Grammar School, before eventually settling in Glasgow, where his father managed the Metropole Theatre. It was here that Stan, at 16, found his true calling and began his theatrical career, performing at the Panopticon in Glasgow. Little did he know, this was the first step on his path to becoming a comedy legend. At the age of 20, Stan took a significant leap in his career by joining Fred Karno's theatrical troupe, adopting the stage name Stan Jefferson. It was during this time that he met Charlie Chaplin, another future comedy icon, and together they toured performing slapstick routines. The two would go on to influence each other profoundly, even sharing a ship to the United States, where their paths would forever intertwine with the emerging world of Hollywood comedy. But as the world plunged into war, Stan faced challenges that went beyond the entertainment industry. Though he registered for military service, his deafness and status as a resident alien provided him with a reprieve from combat. Despite this, Stan never let the obstacles of life deter him. In fact, when the Karno troupe disbanded in 1914, Stan, ever the resilient performer, formed a new troupe, the Keystone Trio, alongside two fellow performers, Edgar and Ethel Hurley. It was in this period that he began experimenting with his character, channeling the style of his old friend Charlie Chaplin, though his own identity on screen was still taking shape. Stan's time in the film industry began with a series of partnerships and experimental work, ultimately leading to his first encounter with Oliver Hardy in 1921 on the silent film The Lucky Dog. It was a brief collaboration, but the two would soon be reunited, forging a partnership that would go down in history as one of the most beloved duos in comedy. During this time, Stan also met May Dahlberg, who suggested he change his stage name due to the superstition surrounding the number 13 in his old name, Stan Jefferson. He embraced the change, adopting the now legendary name, Stan Laurel. In the early stages of his film career, Stan's path was filled with both setbacks and successes. His first film, Nuts in May, marked the beginning of his professional relationship with Universal Studios. However, a studio reorganization soon led to the end of that contract, though Stan's determination kept him moving forward. Throughout the 1920s, he appeared in several films, establishing himself as a talented and versatile performer. By 1925, Stan was firmly entrenched in Hollywood, and in 1927, after a pivotal collaboration with Oliver Hardy, the pair began sharing the screen in a series of films that would solidify their legacy. From this point forward, Laurel and Hardy became inseparable, their natural chemistry providing audiences with endless laughter. But behind the scenes, things were more complicated. In the early 1930s, tensions began to rise between Stan and the Hal Roach Studios over contract issues, leading to a falling out that threatened to derail their partnership. After a lengthy legal battle, Laurel and Hardy returned to Roach, but their relationship with the studio would never be the same. By 1941, they signed with 20th Century Fox, where their films continued to be successful, though Stan found himself more confined creatively than before. Despite these challenges, their films remained beloved, and Laurel and Hardy's legacy grew. But in 1957, tragedy struck when Oliver Hardy passed away, leaving Stan to grapple with the loss of his closest friend and creative partner. The news devastated Stan, who, too ill to attend the funeral, simply said, "Babe would understand." It was a heart-wrenching moment that reflected the profound bond between them. After Hardy's death, Stan Laurel withdrew from the public eye, rejecting all offers to return to film or stage. For Stan, comedy without Hardy simply wasn't worth performing. His personal life, too, had been filled with turmoil, heartbreaks, scandals, and emotional pain that few knew about. As the world laughed at the antics of Laurel and Hardy, Stan bore his burdens in silence, carrying the weight of personal sorrow that would never fully be understood by his audience. Behind the eye, laughter and the bowler hat was a man whose life was defined not just by comedy, but by the deep unspoken pain he endured. His personal losses were unimaginable: the death of his infant son, the dissolution of his early relationships, and the ultimate loss of the partner who had made him one half of the greatest comedy duo the world had ever known. Despite all of this, Stan Laurel's legacy lives on as a testament to the resilience of a man who gave the world laughter, even as he carried the heaviest of burdens. But even the brightest lights cast long shadows, and for Stan Laurel, that shadow loomed, large in the form of his turbulent relationships. Producer Joe Rock, concerned that his wife Dolberg was holding Stan back professionally, took the drastic step of buying her a one-way ticket back to Australia. She left, but the saga didn't end there. In 1937, over a decade later, Dolberg returned to the United States and filed a lawsuit against Stan, demanding financial support. Just as Stan was grappling with the painful collapse of his second marriage, this legal battle added salt to the already gaping wound of his life. The lawsuit was a final insult, a public spectacle that cast yet another bitter note in the already strained symphony of Stan's personal life. Although the case was settled quietly behind closed doors, the damage was done, and the world continued to watch as Stan's private sorrows played out in the unforgiving spotlight. But this drama paled in comparison to the most heartbreaking chapter of his life, a chapter he seldom spoke about, but which would haunt him forever. In May of 1930, Stan's first wife, Lois Nielsen, gave birth to their second child, a son named Stanley Robert Laurel. But the joy of a new life was short-lived. The baby, born 2 months premature, clung to life for just 9 fragile days. For a man whose entire career was built on laughter, joy, and bringing happiness to others, the pain of losing his child was a grief far too heavy to bear. It was a personal sorrow so deep that Stan rarely spoke of it, and yet it left an indelible scar on his soul, a wound that no amount of applause or accolades could ever heal. As if that devastating loss weren't enough, Stan's personal life spiraled further into chaos. His marriage to Lois ended in 1934, and in 1935 he married Virginia Ruth Rogers, but that union was short-lived. Stan, still emotionally tethered to Lois, admitted to feeling the pull of old love, but Lois had moved on, unwilling to rekindle the flame. Then came Ilana Shuvalova, a marriage so tumultuous that rumors began to swirl, one of the wildest being that Stan had attempted to bury her alive in the backyard. The couple's union crashed and burned in 1940, leaving yet another chapter of turmoil in Stan's life. In what seemed like a habit, he remarried Virginia Ruth Rogers, only to divorce her a second time in 1946. That same year, he found solace in the arms of Ida Kataiva Raphael, who would remain by his side until the end of his days. Through it, all through the public scandals, the shattered relationships, and the unbearable grief, Stan Laurel continued to show up on screen, flashing his signature smile. But behind that smile was a man whose life had been marked by unimaginable pain. The loss of his child, the repeated failures of love, and the eventual departure of his closest creative partner. These were the true costs of the man we knew as the Eternal Clown. His life, like his films, was painted in shades of black and white, the comedic brilliance forever intertwined with personal tragedy. After Laurel and Hardy parted ways, Stan Laurel quietly withdrew from the public eye. The spotlight that had once bathed him in glory was now a distant memory, but his legacy remained untouched. In 1961, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences honored him with an honorary Oscar, recognizing his groundbreaking work in the world of comedy. Though too frail to attend the ceremony himself, The recognition was a testament to the love and respect he had earned over the years. Bob Hope introduced the award, and Danny Kaye accepted it on Stan's behalf. A touching tribute to a man whose influence still echoed in the world of entertainment. Despite his legendary career, Stan's final years were spent in modesty. He resided in a small, unpretentious flat in the Oceanana Apartments in Santa Monica, far from the grand Hollywood mansions where many of his peers lived. Fame never spoiled him. In fact, he kept his phone number listed in the public directory, often answering calls from fans himself. Stan took immense pride in writing back to his admirers, always remaining humble and grounded, never forgetting the people who had loved him long before the accolades came. Comedians who followed in his footsteps sought him out as a mentor. Jerry Lewis, who visited Stan in his later years, named the main character of his film the Bellboy Stanley, even including a character modeled after Laurel, played by Bill Richmond. Dick Van Dyke, too, found his way to Stan's doorstep, calling him up and eventually visiting him in person. Stan's influence was far-reaching, his comedic DNA embedded in the work of the greats who came after him. Yet, despite the admiration he received from the next generation of comedians, Stan refused to return to the screen without his beloved partner. When director Stanley Kramer offered him a cameo in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, alongside other comedy legends like Buster Keaton and the Three Stooges, Stan turned it down. His loyalty to Oliver Hardy was unwavering. He simply could not bring himself to perform without him. A subtle tribute was planned, a background shot of a double wearing Laurel's signature bowler hat in an old convertible. But even that tribute was ultimately reworked, with the cameo going to Jack Benny. In the end, Stan Laurel may have stepped away from the camera, but he never truly left the stage. His spirit lived on in the films he had created, in the lives he touched, and in the laughter he had sparked. He continued to mentor comedians, delight fans, and shape the world of comedy, quietly, graciously, and always chasing the perfect joke. As the years wore on, Stan's health began to fade. By 1965, the signs of aging were unmistakable. In January of that year, doctors discovered an infection on the roof of his mouth, and by February, he suffered a heart attack. On February 23, 1965, Stan passed away peacefully in his armchair at the age of 74. There were no grand fanfares, no dramatic speeches, just a quiet departure from a man who had spent his life making the world laugh without uttering a single word. His funeral was held at Church of the Hills in Los Angeles. It wasn't a Hollywood spectacle, but a gathering of those who truly knew and respected him. Among the mourners were Dick Van Dyke, who gave the eulogy, and Buster Keaton, who paid tribute to a man he believed stood in a class of his own. Stan Laurel was laid to rest at Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills Cemetery, a quiet ending for a man who had spent his life in the spotlight. And though Stan was gone, his influence remained everywhere. Not just in the 190 films he left behind, but in the legacy of laughter he shared with his partner, Oliver Hardy. Their partnership created the blueprint for every comedy duo that followed. Through their laughter, they would never truly be forgotten. Stan Laurel's legacy lived on, eternally etched in the hearts of those who had witnessed his genius. Forever, the man who made the world laugh even when his own heart was broken.